Hello, everyone, and welcome back into the fantasy football universe. I am your host, Aaron St Denis at FF Mad Scientist on Twitter, joined as usual by Jeremy Shulman at FF_Rebel, and we have a special guest with us today, Travis May at FF_Travis M. How's it going, Travis? Thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, glad to join you guys. Just fresh off of the a very busy NFL Combine week last week in Indianapolis. Learned so much and just met so many cool people and just a great experience. So still trying to figure out my own kind of rankings as we head towards the NFL Combine. I was actually just sifting through that this morning, so I think I'm ready to go. I think I have my head on straight. So we'll see how this goes.
We've been working on updating ours, and that's what I found has been. You'll have this again when the draft comes around. It's a real thin line there between sticking to your guns and then not massively overreacting to one thing where it's like, oh, this guy who I used to have at 4, I've now dropped down to 47 because he ran 3/10 of a second too slow. So it's a thin line, man. You got to really balance it.
Got to be careful. Most of these tests are really just threshold things, as long as they don't completely tank it, a la, Audric Estime or something like that, then they're probably fine. So,
and it's amazing. I used the one player, Keon Coleman, where he ran the slowest 40 time of any of the receivers, but then in the one drill where you're catching back and forth, he had the fastest top speed of any receiver. So
yeah, he did really well in the gauntlet, and that's not surprising. He's pretty smooth on field. He's not the fastest, even on field, but he'll make a ridiculous play here and there. So. I'm not trying to overreact to anyone too much off of 1 week in spandex, but yeah.
Well, it just goes to show you too that 40-yard dash time does not necessarily equate to playing time, because he played as one of the faster receivers in that gauntlet drill, but ran as the slowest. So don't overreact. That's kind of what we're starting with here. We're going to get into a rookie mock draft here. We have it set for 4 rounds. It's not 4 rounds. We're only going to go 2. I like to have one of each position so the ADP is as reliable as it can be this time of year. Super flex, tight end premium. I guess if we're ready to go, I will start it up at the 101. We have one of my followers, but I'm not sure if he's an analyst or not. So we'll see where he goes. While we wait for him, who you guys taking as your 101 here? Is it still Caleb?
Yeah, it's definitely got to be Caleb Williams here, right? Like if you're in a super flex, you're just taking the best quarterback off the board. Caleb, aside from everything that we've heard on Twitter and from random pundits across the internet, who knows what's going on, but you may have a bit of a troll situation here, Aaron, right off the bat.
No, you know what that is? That's one of my followers who took what I said and went a little too heavy with it. I like JJ McCarthy. I'm not sure. As I've stated before, I like JJ McCarthy. I don't want to take JJ McCarthy at the 101. I'd like to take him around 105. And if I have the 101, I'm looking to trade down. So we start here with JJ, Caleb Williams, and Jaden Daniels. So Brad Reed, 1985. You have lost your bloody mind. Like I said, I am the JJ McCarthy guy, but I'm not using the 101 on him. You can get him way later than that. If you want JJ, you can later pick. What's that?
That does speak to the hype train that's been going on with JJ McCarthy in the past week and really the past month or so. Even I think probably over a month now ago, the betting market shifted and had JJ McCarthy as the favorite to go to the Minnesota Vikings. That's been shifting around as more teams have kind of declared their quarterback interest. Like with the Broncos parting ways with Russell Wilson and things like that. And of course, he posted one of the best 3-cone times that we've ever seen at the NFL Combine and had a great throwing session. I will say it was kind of funny seeing JJ McCarthy go right before Joe Milton, because Joe Milton he's got an absolute rocket. So like McCarthy's accurate and he's making like 50-yard passes on his throwing session, but then Joe Milton comes on, and I know his on-field results were pretty poor throughout his entire career, but it's just hilarious because he can just chuck it.
Yeah.
And he completes like a 73.5 yarder like right in front of me. I'm like, oh my gosh. It's just odd because your eyes are like, wait, which one's the first round prospect here? But
this is why you read the full tweet though and all the context, because I said as much as I like JJ McCarthy and I thought he deserved to be in the top tier conversation, you still can't overdraft for value. There's players that I love in startups that are 10th round players that I think are third round, like have third round potential. Doesn't mean you draft them in the third round. Even if you think JJ could be the 101, you don't have to draft him at 101. Trade back, draft him at 106 or something like that. That was a bit much. I like JJ, but I'm not going 101. We're waiting on Tyler from King Fantasy Sports here, who timed out. We got JJ, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Drake May, and you are up at the 107.
Yeah.
Are you taking the easy play here? For me, it's between Adunze or Bowers. I assume everyone goes Bowers here, but
yeah. So I intentionally chose this spot knowing that this would probably be who it was between, given how the NFL Combine went. I really enjoyed the interviews with Rome Adunze. Got to talk to him. And he was hilarious on the podium, but just really intelligent. I think he had a great week, tested well, really helped his draft stock. Brock Bowers, on the other hand, he clearly wasn't made for that environment.
No.
But he's still a fantastic player. I think right now, as of today, I lean Rome Odunze. I think Brock Bowers still could go pretty early in the first round, but I also wouldn't be surprised if he fell somewhere to the Bengals. It's pick, I guess, 18. Right now. And if that's the case, that's still plenty to be excited about. And he's probably going to be in a great role. But I lean Adunze.
I'm really glad you took him there. I'm always anti first round rookie tight end, so I would have taken him anyways. But honestly, when I was on the clock at 105, I was very close to taking Adunze over Neighbors. It wasn't like this going into the combine, but I really liked what I seen from Adunze. Just in everything on field, his attitude. I don't know if I'm just overreacting, but him staying on the field at the end of the drills, repeatedly trying to better his time on that 3-cone drill. I dug that. And I thought that said a lot about a character guy who wants to put in the work. And I love that. And that may just be me, but I was very close to taking Adunze at 5.
Yeah, it may be psychosis as well that he stayed out there so long, just to get that time.
Yeah, and I will say it was funny watching the agility drills because they were really odd about calling faults, like crazy. So I was right in front of where I was sitting. It was probably 20 yards away from the 40-yard finish and like 10 yards away, like in terms of on field from like the 20-yard shuttle. And so I could watch the agility drills, and the entire wide receiver group was frustrated trying to do their drills because they just kept on calling fault, restart, fault, and they're slipping on the turf. Bobby McConkey, you might notice, doesn't have a 20 shuttle time. He did it several times.
Gave up.
He just gave up. Like he was just like, nah, I'm good. I don't want to hurt myself trying to get called a fault like 20 times on these guys.
Rome must have kicked over that third pylon in the 3-cone drill 20 times I seen. So yeah, it wasn't just him. It was interesting. It's interesting. We've had 3 auto picks of 3 managers who were in the draft when they were on the clock. I'm not sure, but okay. So it went Adunze at 107, Bowers 108, Brian Thomas Jr. at 109. Then Jeremy takes Xavier Worthy at the 110. Is that all about that record-breaking 40 time for you, Jeremy?
No, listen, confirmation bias is a hell of a drug, right, guys? But
awesome.
Xavier Worthy had an amazing tape. I thought he was one of the first wide receivers I ended up looking at, just happenstance. And, he really held up throughout the rest of the process. He can run a route. He's quick and fast. We saw just how fast he was. And I think, the biggest point for me with him is he's 20 years old, right? So he's got plenty of room to develop. And, some people in this room, including Travis May, who I read your piece on him the other day, thinks that it's very possible that he could go to the Jags at 17. What are you hearing about that? Obviously he's climbing up the NFL boards. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't want to dive into all the things that I had learned, but I've been talking to some staffers in the NFL about Worthy for a couple of years now, just because the on-field stuff, the actual tracking data that you and I, like us normals, don't have access to, like the full next gen stats. Yeah, I mean, really, we don't have like the next gen stats data to like look ahead with all the different tracking services. And there's a handful of tracking services that even monitor all the college game. And I would pay a pretty penny to have access to that. But apparently Worthy has been for a few years now one of the freakiest athletes in terms of on-field athleticism that we've seen in the past few years. So it was no surprise that he ran one as fast as he did. I guess it was surprising that he broke the record, but he was ridiculously fast. So even if he messed up his start, he was going to be one of the freakiest athletes there. But the way that he accelerates, decelerates, wins on field, it was just I was excited to be there to see it happen. But too, to just see somebody who I've been rooting for since before he even came into college. Like I play in some weird fantasy leagues where you can roster these players, and actually get points for them in college. And so I drafted him, as early as like the spring before his freshman year. And so, seeing somebody succeed that you're rooting for that long, and not only succeed but break the record for the 40, it was an awesome celebration to be there live and to see the crowd. There was at that point in the evening only a few hundred people, because like most of the fans in that little fan section had left because they'd seen the throwing sessions, all that. But it sounded like a full stadium erupting and celebrating a touchdown. It was just so crazy. So excited to see that. He's probably going to be a first-round lock at this point.
It's interesting to see the two Texas receivers, and then Troy Franklin slides all the way to the 112. That's interesting. And then, despite some lackluster results here at the Combine, we have 4 running backs go at 201, 202, 4, and 5. I think that might be the only ones, because I think the other running backs really fell. We have Bucky Irving and Audric Estime. They died a quick death there. So I really found that I liked this draft class a lot better before the Combine. And that's me, again, trying to rein myself in and not overreact too much, because I used to love all the way to almost the end of the second round. Now, once we get to about 203, I start going, I don't really love any of these options. I think that there were a lot of disappointing results at the Combine. As you see, like Franklin, he went 105 in some of our drafts. Now he's 112. So what was your thought there? You took Braylon Allen. He didn't test, right?
Allen. He did not test, but I talked with him personally. He's been prepping out in California, just working on a few things. One, with his athletic testing, but two, some footwork and some receiving game stuff to just continue improving in that regard. They changed schemes at Wisconsin this past year, and he was able to prove himself a little bit more in pass pro, and he was asked to catch the ball a little bit more. He wasn't the most efficient receiver, but he was actually much improved from his small sample size in his first 2 seasons at Wisconsin. But we already knew he was a really explosive athlete and just ridiculously strong runner. But for him to really, I guess, round out his game here ahead of the NFL draft, I think it's going to be a great thing. He's probably going to get right as far as speed and explosion and agility, and with his tests with a couple more weeks of prep, and then just destroy his pro day results. And we're probably going to see kind of a late surge with his hype after he actually tested his pro day, even if pro days do typically see a slight improvement in terms of the measured time results. Like if
friendly home scorekeeper.
Yeah, we're still going to see kind of a late hype storm with him. But I am interested just to see these running backs kind of come off the board in the order that they did, because Trey Benson went first. Marshawn Lloyd went second, which is interesting to me, but he was the most efficient running back in Power 5 last year, over 8 yards per touch. And I talked to him about that, and like, he just was really complimentary of all of his coaching and how they've kind of coached up quick twitch decision making to help him improve. And both of them have struggled with injury, but both seem to be top 3 or 4 athletes at the Combine, which was really promising. So I like both those players.
I'm going to hit pause because I'm not sure if I hit end if it wipes everything out, but we're going to stop at 2 rounds there. I like the second round a bit as far as the running backs. For me, I go Benson, then it's probably Brooks and Allen together, and Lloyd 4th. Not as high on Corum anymore. I like the speed here of Jalen Wright, but it got really interesting. Of the receivers, I liked McConkey and Pearsall. Corley's all right. I don't know. Like that second round for me kind of got a little bit scarier. It seemed to have a lot more potential, but once again, a lot of these guys are going to run through the drills again or to try and improve it on their pro day. Is anything you guys take away here? Anything out of the ordinary aside from JJ McCarthy going 101?
Well, it's at least interesting in the second round that that's where you see all the running backs fly off the board. I think once draft capital hits and we see where these guys end up and when they go, that's going to shuffle things around. As we know, RBs can be freaks, but if they don't have the opportunity, it's going to be a tough go for them in fantasy. But outside of that, I think it makes a lot of sense. You see about half the second round as running backs.
And this is the first time we've done one, the first one since our combine. I think we've done 2 or 3 since the combine, but this is the first one where Benson didn't go at the end of the first round. Typically, he was the running back since the combine that's been sneaking into the 111 or 112, but no first round running back. So that's interesting. And, quite a loaded receiver class here. But despite that, it looked like it thinned out really quickly and people just transitioned to running back and they're willing to take the gamble on whoever it is. How about you, Travis? Anything stand out?
Well, here? Michael Penix Jr. didn't get selected, which, it's funny because after the semifinal game at the college football playoff, a lot of people were trying to anoint him as like, hey, he needs to be like a top tier quarterback, right up there with, Drake May and Jaden Daniels. And then the national championship happened and he was kind of, some of his imperfections were put on display. And not to go in the first 2 rounds of a rookie draft is probably a little bit much because I actually have him a hair now ahead of Bo Nix. And I think with what he brings to the table in terms of avoiding negative plays, I talked to him about that at the combine, and it was what goes into like having like an 8% pressure to sack rate. Like that's ridiculously low. Like Drake May, 20%ish. Jaden Daniels, 24% for his career. Trending in the right direction with Daniels, but to be 3 times as good, in terms of percentage at avoiding sacks when pressured, that's pretty crazy. Snacks. Yes.
I'm looking back here. I want to see in our last one, 7.0. Do you see him on the? Oh, is that still on the board? Okay, I wasn't sure if I still shared. I'm trying to find where he is. Where the heck is he? Oh, there he goes. He went 210 in our last one, so you're right. Yeah. He fell a bit, which is kind of odd. He didn't do anything at the combine, did he? I don't think he tested at all.
He didn't test, but he did throw and stuff. But he for me, it's just I think there's a really good chance that all 6 quarterbacks end up going inside like the top 50 picks, and then we just don't see any other quarterbacks selected day 2 at all. So I think that's probably what it's going to be, somewhere around there. And so if that happens, we're going to see somebody probably taking him in the round 2. But yeah, so that was the one thing that stood out for me. But
he seems to be. Sorry, go ahead.
It's not really a surprise, but I have Jalen McMillan higher than a couple of these guys, as well as Roman Wilson in the mix here. Roman Wilson, people kind of quickly forgot that he was the best wide receiver at the Senior Bowl. Like it was him and Ladd McConkey, but Roman Wilson was maybe the best one. So he had a great career at Michigan. Was on a ridiculous pace before they kind of cut down the passing down in the back half when McCarthy was dinged up a little bit. But he was on pace for a ridiculous season last fall. So Roman Wilson, Jalen McMillan, I think should be in the mix here somewhere around round 2. So that's probably a little surprising. And then if you want to go back to the board, did we actually get Jalen Wright selected?
I'm trying to bring out. I was scanning through the other boards here. Jalen Wright, would you take him 210?
210, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other guys you said, Nix, Roman Wilson, and McMillan. I'm scanning through. I just realized now you can't see me scanning through our older drafts. They seem to be all 3 falling at the somewhere between 210 and the 302, and this is our 8th one, and they've gone in that 4 or 5 spot range in all 8 drafts. So
that makes sense. So yeah, probably right after this range is when you might consider a Roman Wilson or Jalen McMillan, or especially in this draft's case, Michael Penix Jr. But yeah, Jalen Wright was a big winner at the combine. I think we already understood that he was going to test well. His opening over under marks for 40 was like 4.32, which was absurd. That was never going to happen. But coming in at 4.38 was still impressive. So yeah, I think there weren't many running backs that helped their wallets, but Isaac Garendo for sure, but he's not draftable in this range. Kamani Vidal definitely helped himself out as well. Made some money, not draftable in this range, but in a running back class like we have, I'm not surprised to see 0 running backs to go in the first round. But yeah, this second round, it looks like there might be some fun value.
You know what the other notable thing here for me is? it tells you how bad Sanders was at the combine, Jatavian Sanders. He was typically going in all 7 of our drafts so far. He's been going 202, 203, 204. He makes it all the way through to the 3rd round in this one. So just goes to show you he wasn't great. Did you what did you think of Sanders at the combine? That's where we can round it off after here.
Sure. I mean, when I was talking to him ahead of, I guess, I don't even know what day it was, the day before he went onto the field, he wasn't actually expecting to be like a crazy fast tester. Like even when asked about his 40-yard dash time, he was like, "Yeah, I hope to get in the low 4.6s." And he was 4.69 is not like great for a tight end, but that's actually above average historically.
Yep.
Speaking. So that's again not like a bad test at all. In fact, like people, were freaking out about last year, Michael Mayer's testing and things like that. But again, he wasn't slow either. So got decent capital himself. And so Sanders, I think, is going to get some decent draft capital still. But I wouldn't be surprised if Theo Johnson actually works his way up as the
absolutely
maybe the 2nd tight end off the board, like in terms of real NFL draft capital. That's kind of the buzz I got in terms of like the number of teams that were having formals with him and hyping him up, and reporters that were interested in him that I talked to said, "Hey, my team's talking to this guy. My team's talking to this guy." It just seemed like Theo Johnson, even before testing out as well as he did, was already gaining steam. And so that seems like he's going to be at worst the tight end 3. And so that's fun because we weren't seeing a bunch of tight ends that were like early round picks this year. And so if it is that both Sanders and Theo Johnson sneak into round 2 of real NFL draft capital, then that's great for fantasy football purposes. Makes a couple more guys interesting.
That's awesome. He's from my hometown and went to my high school, and still he was so unproductive that I didn't really know much about him. And he was so good at the combine, I really got high on him until all the reports are now, he visited with Baltimore and Pittsburgh. He's going to end up in the AFC North and just completely ruin another tight end because that's what Baltimore does. But for now, like
all the time,
yeah, it was definitely nice to see someone else step up. But so that's what we're seeing, where Sanders fell, and the last draft we did, Theo Johnson and Ben Sinnott stepped up a bit. So, all right. Well, thank you for joining us, Travis. You want to take a second here? Tell everyone where they can find you and your work.
Sure. I am not really doing much fantasy exclusive content anymore. I do the College2Canton podcast on RotoViz Radio with Stefan Leco. You can find him on Twitter at Stefan Leco. You can find me at FF_Travis M for all my draft stuff, fantasy football stuff. But all of my written work these days is actually with A to Z Sports, doing a bunch of college football, NFL draft coverage there. We're actually kind of building out the team still for college football season this year. I'm the managing editor for that side of things. So it's going to be fun just kind of building that out and seeing that continue to grow as we've just gone kind of national as a company the last couple of years on the NFL side, and just seeing the college football side grow. So really going to dive into just over a dozen teams covered this year and then go full Power 5 here moving forward. But yeah, thanks again for having me on. I always love to draft some rookies and talk some NFL drafts. So yeah, good luck in all your leagues, all your drafts coming up.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us. As always, come back tomorrow and check out what's next on the Fantasy Football Universe, where we are continuing with the rookie sneak peek series, or head over to fantasyfootballuniverse.com where we have like 150 rookie profiles and a whole bunch of these written forms of mock drafts. For Aaron and Jeremy, thank you, Travis, for joining us, and take care. We will see you all next time.